Is Apple finally dead? It's the question that's been stirring up conversations across tech forums, social media, and Wall Street alike. Today, I'm going to dive deep into the challenges facing Apple, the competition breathing down their neck, and whether or not they can make a legendary comeback. Stay tuned till the end, because I'll also share some surprising broker data that sheds light on where investors think Apple is really headed. For over 4 decades, Apple has been the crown jewel of Silicon Valley. From the Mac to the iPod and of course the revolutionary iPhone, Apple didn't just create products, they created cultural phenomena. Under the visionary leadership of Steve Jobs, Apple built an empire of innovation, customer loyalty, and immense profits. But fast forward to today and things seem different. The excitement isn't quite the same. We're not seeing those groundbreaking one more thing moments. So what happened? Where did Apple lose its spark? To truly understand where Apple stands today, we need to take a trip down memory lane and revisit the company's rise to tech stardom. It's easy to forget that Apple wasn't always the giant we see today. In fact, back in the mid-90s, Apple was on the verge of collapse, teetering on the brink of irrelevance as it struggled to compete with companies like Microsoft. But then, everything changed. In 1997, Steve Jobs returned to the company he had co-founded, and with him, Apple got a new lease on life. The turning point came in 2001 with the launch of the iPod, a product that redefined how we consumed music. Apple wasn't just selling devices anymore, it was creating entire ecosystems around them. Then, in 2007, Steve Jobs stood on stage and introduced the product that would change everything: the iPhone. With a single device, Apple upended industries: telecommunications, photography, computing, and software development. The iPhone was more than just a smartphone, it became a cultural phenomenon. By 2010, Apple was not only the most valuable tech company in the world, but it was also leading a revolution in how people interact with technology on a daily basis. From 2007 to 2015, Apple enjoyed a golden age of success. Their stock price soared. New products like the iPad, MacBook Air, and the Apple Watch captivated consumers. Apple became the first company in history to hit $1 trillion valuation in 2018, cementing its place as not just a tech company, but as a symbol of modern innovation and design. Apple's secret weapon wasn't just its products, it was the ecosystem they built. Each new device was seamlessly integrated with the others. If you had an iPhone, getting a MacBook or iPad made sense. And with the App Store, another revolutionary concept, Apple created an economy within an economy, allowing developers to build applications that enrich the user experience, creating even more value for the consumer. Under Steve Jobs' leadership, Apple not only dominated the tech world but also shaped the entire consumer electronics industry. Other companies didn't just want to compete with Apple, they wanted to be Apple. Their sleek designs, minimalist aesthetics, and groundbreaking technology set trends that competitors like Samsung and Google scrambled to follow. But here's the thing, Apple wasn't just selling products. They were selling an identity. Their marketing genius was rooted in tapping into the emotional core of their customers. Owning an Apple product wasn't just about having the latest gadget, it was about being part of a movement, a community, a brand that represented creativity, quality, and innovation. By the time the 2010s rolled around, Apple had become a household name, synonymous with innovation, quality, and sleek design. Their customer loyalty was, and still is, legendary. People didn't just buy iPhones, they lined up for hours outside Apple stores to get them on launch day. And let's not forget about the fan culture. Tech enthusiasts dissected every rumor about upcoming products, adding to the buzz and mystique surrounding the company. But as we know, no empire lasts forever. Even as Apple was basking in its global dominance, cracks were beginning to show. Competition was heating up, and the company's business model, based largely on hardware sales, was beginning to face unprecedented challenges. The question now is, has Apple peaked? Can the company that reshaped entire industries reinvent itself once again? Or have we already seen Apple's best days? Stay with me as we dive deeper into Apple's recent struggles and what might lie ahead for the tech giant. Let's start with sales. The iPhone, which once dominated the smartphone market, has seen stagnation. In 2023, Apple reported a decline in iPhone sales of 2.4% compared to the previous year. iPads and MacBooks aren't faring much better. Global competition, particularly from companies like Samsung, Huawei, and Xiaomi, is fiercer than ever. These brands are producing high-quality devices at lower price points, putting pressure on Apple's premium pricing strategy. But it's not just about competition. Tech industry is experiencing supply chain disruptions like never before, especially post-pandemic. Apple's manufacturing hubs in China have been hit by delays and shortages, directly impacting their ability to meet consumer demand efficiently. Let's take a look at what the brokers are saying. Analysts have mixed reviews on Apple's stock. As of Q3 2024, major brokerage firms like Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs are still giving Apple a buy rating, but caution has crept in. In fact, while Morgan Stanley set a price target of $220 for Apple, the stock is currently hovering at around $170, a far cry from its all-time highs. And when we look deeper into their financials, Apple's reliance on buybacks and stock splits becomes apparent. Many institutional investors are cautious, with some reducing exposure in favor of other tech giants like Microsoft and Nvidia. One key factor that brokers are highlighting is Apple's enormous cash reserves, which stood at over $160 billion as of 2024. This cash gives Apple incredible flexibility to pivot or invest heavily in new technologies, making them a potentially safer bet than most competitors. Another issue Apple faces is changing consumer behavior. In the early 2000s, Apple fans would queue around the block for the latest iPhone. But now, more and more consumers are holding onto their devices longer. Why upgrade every year when a 3-year-old iPhone is still perfectly fine? This has hit Apple hard, reducing the high-margin sales cycle they once enjoyed. The smartphone market itself is also becoming saturated, especially in mature economies like the US and Europe. With fewer must-have innovations, it's harder for Apple to stand out from competitors. In countries like China and India, where there's significant growth potential, companies like Xiaomi and Oppo are aggressively cutting into Apple's market share with cheaper alternatives. Many critics argue that Apple has fallen behind in innovation. While companies like Samsung and Google push the boundaries with foldable phones and more advanced AI integration, Apple has been slower to adopt the latest trends. Take 5G, for example. Apple didn't release a 5G-capable iPhone until well after Samsung had dominated that space. Even Apple's entry into the streaming market with Apple TV Plus hasn't turned heads like they hoped. Competing with Netflix, Disney Plus, and Amazon has proven to be an uphill battle. Despite throwing billions into content, the reception has been lukewarm. Internally, Apple has been going through some growing pains. Since the passing of Steve Jobs, many have questioned whether Tim Cook can maintain the same level of innovation and vision. Under his leadership, Apple has certainly been profitable, but is it groundbreaking? High-profile departures in the executive and engineering teams have also raised concerns about the company's ability to continue leading in the tech world. And don't forget about the loss of Jonathan Ive, Apple's legendary designer. With his exit, Apple lost the creative mind behind some of their most iconic products. What does this mean for their future? But it's not all doom and gloom. Apple has been quietly shifting gears. Instead of focusing solely on hardware, they've been ramping up their services business. Apple TV Plus, Apple Arcade, iCloud, and the App Store have become crucial parts of their revenue model. Services now contribute nearly 30% to Apple's total revenue. While it's a big pivot for a company known for hardware, it's also a risk. Can Apple truly succeed as a service provider? While some services like Apple Music have taken off, others, such as Apple Arcade, have struggled to gain traction in an increasingly competitive market. But don't count Apple out just yet. With over $160 billion in cash reserves, Apple is far from running on empty. There are rumors of a major AR headset launch, which could revolutionize how we interact with both the digital and real world. They've also made significant investments in artificial intelligence and healthcare, two industries that could be massive in the coming years. Plus, the rollout of 5G-enabled iPhones and a potential foldable device in 2025 could reignite consumer interest and help Apple regain some of its lost market share. So, is Apple dead? Not by a long shot. While they're facing some of the toughest challenges in their history, their ability to pivot, innovate, and leverage their cash reserves could spell a massive comeback. But with intense competition and an ever-evolving tech landscape, the next few years will be crucial. What do you think? Is Apple on its way to a massive rebound, or are we witnessing the beginning of the end for the tech giant? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget, if you want the latest updates on tech stocks and company analysis, subscribe to the channel and check out my next video on the companies to watch in 2024.